In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Today I want to talk about page 45 and up to page 48, which actually begins with this idea, language acquisition, and the idea is that we want to work with language faculty, okay? Well, there are two opposing views, like, as you can see here in my, Microsoft Word. There are the language faculty, two opposing views. Idea one is that language is separate from other aspects of the mind. Okay? Idea two is the opposite, which says the language is part of the other aspects of the mind. We don't know which one is right. Let us begin the page 45. Well, the book actually says, line 1 on page 45, under the discussion of the language faculties, says something like this. Already lurking in the argument has been the assumption that language faculty or language knowledge is independent of other aspects of the mind. So actually, the book says already lurking here means lying, okay? Already lying in the argument has been the argument, assumption that language knowledge is independent of other aspects of the mind. I am going to talk about number two of these arguments that you can see on my Microsoft Word. So we want to say that number two is wrong and number one is right. Okay? So language is separate from other aspects of the mind. We call this as autonomy of language. What does it mean? We have got something called language, which is different from other cognitive systems humans have. Maybe they have got other cognitive systems, like, for example, logic, like mathematics, like, I don't know, learning, etc., etc. But one thing that is different from all these areas, and it is independent of other areas like this, is language faculty. So that's why actually God actually says in Surah Ar-Rahman, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahman, خلق الإنسان علمه البيان, علمه البيان. So when God talks about, in fact, language, when God talks about human beings, he actually says that we, the God, okay, gave him, means all human beings, علمه البيان, okay, علمه البيان, okay, we taught him, in fact, or put in his instinct what we call as language. So this idea that appears on page 45 actually wants to say it is separate, okay? So first of all, the first idea is on line 1, 2, 3, 4. So it says something like this. Line 4 of page 45 says, support for the independence of language from the rest of the mind comes from unique nature of language knowledge. Okay? For example, what is that? The locality principle does not necessarily apply to all other aspects of human thinking. Okay? So language knowledge is in fact local. Okay? If you want to do something like locality, it is part of your language knowledge that you are born with. But your thinking actually does not mean to be, it is not actually intended to be like a locality. So it's only, it is part of language knowledge. So we come to the conclusion that there's one separate area of the mocha, okay, one separate area of the brain, okay, devoted only to language, and there are other separate other systems that are different out there in the mind, okay. So it is something like this. So idea 2 says that it is part of another aspect. So language is part of, let's say, other cognitive systems that we call thinking, let's say, or let's say mathematics or logic, etc. It is part of that. Human beings, the second idea says that human beings learn language because they are able to learn many things. But idea 1 says that humans actually have got language without even the ability to think critically. It is independent. Idea 1 wants to say there are two separate areas. One is language, the other is all other cognitive systems. So this is idea 1. So line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 says it is not clear how CUG principles could operate in areas of the mind other than language that we are going to, in fact, study more when you read it. The next paragraph, beginning with further arguments for independence comes from language acquisition. What does it mean? Language acquisition supports the first idea, as you see here in my Microsoft Word here. Language is separate, okay? Language is separate, not dependent. So language acquisition actually shows that, language knowledge is independent of all these areas of the mind, okay? So line 1 says further arguments for the independence of language in this independence comes from language acquisition. But let's see, what is this language acquisition? Principles such as locality do not appear to be learnable. Do not appear to be learnable. No human being teaches another human being how to learn his mother tongue. Actually, the father does not teach the child how to speak Arabic, how to speak Farsi, how to speak Kurdish, how to speak English. Actually, kids themselves, human babies actually develop this ability without the help of their mothers. So actually, mothers and fathers or everybody around the child is fascinated with the development of language in the children, not teaching them. Okay? They are only fascinated by the fast tempo, with the fast speed that actually language acquisition develops in children. Language acquisition occurs in children. So this is another argument for the separation of language from other aspects of mind. Okay? So why? Only and only because children do not need to, in fact, go and learn, okay, how to speak. You remember, especially in Arabic countries, it is like this, that the kids are born with no language, But after a couple of years, you see that the child is able to talk, okay, a couple of years. But if we want to teach them how to speak Fusha, we have to send the child to school under the supervision of a teacher. So Fusha by the child is acquired, is learned at school. But well, when it comes to his ability or her ability to talk, the language that, the variety of language that you speak, for example, you speak Iraqi, Arabic, so the child actually develops Iraqi Arabic before he actually goes to school to, in fact, learn, not acquire Fusha. Okay? So, when we say that language acquisition provides support for the first idea, it's like this. Why? Because the child is not able to be taught. You cannot easily teach children. You cannot easily teach children abjad. You cannot teach children abjad. Not only abjad, you cannot teach them how to, in fact, add 2 plus 2 is 4. We have to wait for the time the child goes to school to develop, goes to school to, in fact, be provided with mathematics, with science, with, in fact, Fusha, etc., etc. So we come to the conclusion why the child is able to, in fact, language at this early age. It's only and only, according to Chomsky and linguistics, it is only and only due to the fact that language faculty is independent from all other, in fact, areas of the mind. So it's like this. Let us go to another, in fact, thing which appears on the last line of page 45. So maybe I'm going to read from the 3 lines to the bottom of that page in order for you to see what we want to say. Well, 3 lines to the bottom of the page says, well, in the absence of more abstract, more definite evidence, the uniqueness of language principles, such as locality, point to an autonomous area of the mind devoted to language knowledge. So we call it language faculty. Okay, we have got a special kind of ability. Faculty here means ability, of course. Okay, it means that we are able to talk genetically. We are able to talk, and it is separate from other, in fact, cognitive systems that we have, which enables us to, in fact, understand other things better. Okay, that's it. So we call it as language faculty. Okay, in Farsi we call it قوة النطق, which is, if it is, I am good at it, قوة النطق. Maybe, I don't know. We have to, in fact, wait for you to see what we call it in your, in fact, Fusha. Anyway, line 2 actually comes to have the same idea. Well, let us see. Language, page 46, line 2. Language knowledge is separate from other representations in the mind. It is not the same as knowing mathematical concepts, for example. Okay? So this is like this. So this idea gives us a kind of thing that, well, language, in fact, the mind of human beings is not one part. It has got different parts in it. Different parts in it. One part is language. There are several other parts, but this part is dependent, independent, independent or autonomous. Autonomous. It is, in fact, it works with other parts, but it is different from those other parts. Okay, on page 646. Okay, I don't want to continue. Actually, there are nice arguments on page 46, what I actually ask you to follow. On page 46, there's a very nice argument. Well, actually, the paragraph beginning with, in some ways, for page 46, paragraph beginning with, in some ways, if you actually go down to line 1, 2, 3, 4 of this paragraph, it just says something very nice. Well, the book says we speak of the body in terms of organs, okay? For example, the heart organ, okay? Or the lungs organ, okay? Lungs organ. Can you see my actually, in fact, chest? Inside the chest we have two lungs, okay? With breathe in and out, okay? So we have got a lung organ which enables us to, in fact, breathe in and out. We have got the liver, okay? Kabid, okay? And why not talk about language as a special kind of organ? So there are two types of organs,